Everyone, as usual, if you have an agenda item, let me know. That isn't one of the ones listed.
Hey, Joe. I pinged you last night,
Uh-huh.
or yesterday afternoon. I don't know if you saw it, but I was going to suggest that we put in to the call for presentation for Mobile World Congress.
Right. So that's the second.
You did see that. Sorry.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Yep. And perfectly good to remind me because I might have missed it. All right.
Yeah, as you may have guessed, I'm on my cell phone right now, so I can't
Okay,
see very
your
well.
your iPhone 234. That's fine.
Yeah, it's an old family name.
Got it. No problem. All right, we'll give people just a couple more minutes, then we'll get started. It's now I guess heavy conference season coming up, right? Because we have
Yes, it is.
OCP next week. We have Linux Foundation Summit in Monterey. We have Supercompute coming up. I think there are a couple of others too. Those are just the ones I'm going to. So
KubeCon North America.
Yeah, KubeCon North America somewhere sometime soon.
oh, what is?
KubeCon?
Oh yeah, KubeCon. Right. Yeah, I'm not going to that one, but yeah, that one. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first announcement is that I've been talking to a professor whose name is Justine Sherry from Carnegie Mellon University about a project called INSO, which is a DPU host interface and sort of data flow that's really interesting. So she and a couple of her students are going to come talk to us. I believe we agreed on November 9th. Might be November 2nd, but I'll confirm with her and put it on the agenda. But that'll be something interesting, and she's interested in opening up INSO and so on, and it's worth taking a look at as to whether that would be an interesting thing for OPI. I think there's information out there if you want to look it up, but when they present it, it's done very well. So we'll have them come in person. Um, okay. All right. All right. Nginx demo in progress. Let's start with that one.
Sure. So we got
Do you-
quite a bit. Oh no, I'm not going to show a demo yet. We're not quite ready to show anything. I just wanted to give people a status and maybe put out a call for some assistance here and there. Boris has been very graciously working after hours, helping us get the API is working with actual hardware. We're finding that a lot of the examples and things are targeted at using a simulated environment. And once you go to a hardware environment, there are changes need to be made to the YAML files and config files here and there. So we're documenting those and creating issues for those as we go along. I'll be putting in more after the actual event as I'm trying to get this demo functioning. Where we're at right now is we have we've got a DPU that is getting a DHCP address from the SCTP container set. It is getting the image that we want downloaded, the ISO that we want downloaded to it. And we're at the point where we're now need to figure out, and the image that we're downloading is a Red Hat single node OpenShift. And I'm at the place now where we need to figure out what are the what script ought we write on the card in order to kick off that install process for the card itself. And is that going to be different across cards? I know we've done it manually on the cards. We're trying to figure out how to kick that off auto-magically. So I may reach out to Team Steve, and I reached out to you. If you have someone who's done this before, installed single node OpenShift using APIs or a script, that would be awesome. Love to. We're able to get the ISO on the card itself. We just need to figure out what do we got to do next to move forward. So that would be our next step. We'll be able to show this demo in pieces. We'll show one card getting the image. We'll be able to show what we'll be able to show right now is, hey, we're going to look at a Bluefield 3, and we're going to see it receive the image and get up and running. We'll show a Marvell Octeon 10 having single node OpenShift on it and running. And if I have time, we received and got those put in the lab on Monday, some Intel Mount Dayton cards, and we'll try to do the same thing with it. Now that we know what we've got to do with the OPI scripts and config files, we ought to be able to run that against the Mount Dayton card, Dayton Peak, something like that.
Is it? Oh, Dan, what's the exact name of that card?
Dayton Peak, yeah.
Dayton Peak.
I thought, yeah. It's just, everyone has so many
yes,
interesting names for all of their little silicon components that it's often challenging. All right, keep going.
That's so at OCP we have a booth. We have a station inside the ARM booth, which is, I guess, right next to the NVIDIA booth. We have an Intel dummy card that we can show. NVIDIA is looking for a dummy card, and I think Marvell is bringing one. They're bringing some folks. I think they're going to bring a card to the show as well. So we'll have at least those 3 cards, dummy cards for people to touch and feel at this little station that we have. The presentation that we've got is OPI branded presentation, and it'll just be running on a monitor, and then we'll be able to talk to this. Hoping to have a recorded demo by the time we show up with the pieces working from different setups working from different card vendors. And again, the goal is to show Nginx proxying traffic not yet using any of the offloads, but just proxying traffic to a web server that is either on the host or on another host. So that's the plan. That's the plan right now.
Yeah, and leaning into the multi-vendor component here is really important.
Yeah, and showing a couple of things are important. One, showing that everybody is working together, that this is a community where these vendors who compete everywhere else are collaborating here to make this work. Showing that a single set of provisioning steps will work across vendors, and that we can run a real workload on it to offload from the host. So offload and isolate. So that's the plan.
Right. And then you guys are going to generate a narrative, a blog, a how-to based on your experiences, right?
Yeah,
In other
we'll
words,
generate a how-to. I think before we do that, we're going to have to generate the issues that because we've had to heavily modify what's in the GitHub to work with actual hardware rather than simulated hardware.
okay.
And I think one of the decisions we need to make is, and maybe this could be made in this forum, or maybe it's with Boris or whoever's running the provisioning group, but we either need to have one set of documentation that has if you're running this in a simulated environment, do this. If you're running it in a hardware environment, do this. Or we need to have a set of documentation that is simulated environment and a set that is, if you weren't running this with real hardware, do this.
Yeah, I think it's always easier to consume if you say, here's the steps and setup for simulated environment. Here's the steps and setup for real hardware. And then inside the real hardware one, you can show what you have to do different for NVIDIA, Marvell, Intel, and AMD.
Okay.
Right. So I think that's the cleanest way to proceed. And if, once we have any of our startup members have real hardware that they want to show, we would integrate them in there as well. But I think that's the cleanest way to do it. Or I guess you could take, actually, maybe it is even better if we're going to do that, to say, emulated environment, and then each of the hardware sort of at for every major chain of steps.
Yep.
Which will really highlight what's completely common, and what the kind of the branches are. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I prefer that better. So, and I think, I think a narrative of, here's what we had. I think a narrative sort of blog on here's what we actually had to do would be valuable. In other words, and then you could point to the how-to guide or as you go, right? So why is this step in the how-to? Well, because we ran into this problem, then this problem, then this problem, and they all got solved. They're all solvable. And now that you know this, it's all super easy, right? So, we've had a comment before in this call, well, what is there to do? It's all easy. It's done. Well, that's true if you've already done it a bunch of times and you know what to do. Like a lot of things, learning a new video game, coming back up to speed on linear algebra so you can do AI arithmetic, things like that. Yeah, once you've done it, all looks easy. But if you've never done it,
easy if you've got Boris on speed dial from 5 to 9 p.m. every night for a couple nights a week.
Yeah. And you do for a little while, but you can't count on that indefinitely, right? That's the trick. And so
Boris doesn't scale.
Correct. So but a how-to guide does.
Mm-hmm.
That experience with creating the how-to guide, is kind of an interesting read, and we could publicize that. You guys could become famous, because we could publicize that, and people are always looking for, how do I really do that? Especially if we want to start pulling more developers in, because they'll see A, oh, it can really work, and B, they could contribute. Oh, I know how I could do that. I mean, that's kind of what part of what we need to instill in people is, oh, I could do that. Oh yeah, that, and then, so, and so this is why I was so much in favor of the example, is exactly the narrative you've told us here. And again, a written form of that's kind of blogged up, I think would actually be interesting. I don't know. Anybody have a different opinion? Because, I always, like to have different opinions, because then we get to a better answer. Or an adjustment of that, or is that a good idea? Or a waste of time?
I think it's a really good idea. I think we need to make sure that we maybe open source that process a little bit. Mostly because I know that we all have day jobs. How do we help whoever is quote unquote writing the blog to write the blog?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could take again, if you took what Paul just said from the recording, took the transcript, dumped that into a text file, added pointers to to where the code was modified.
Actually, you totally just solved that problem. What you do is you have the conversation verbally and create an audio transcript, and then just edit the audio transcript.
That's what I was thinking.
That's a good idea.
And because again, I want that one to be a little loose, a little conversational. Again, we could do a separate recording of it as just back and forth, and then
you could do it. Yeah, you could totally do like a live video recording, so you have it on the OPI site, and then you build the video transcript from that, so that people can use either.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd publish the video of that. I would take the transcript and publish that, because but Joe,
videos are cute.
I know, but they're also very slow information transfer for this kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, we have these verbal meetings so we can have this back and forth. Otherwise, there would be no point. Because video is often, unless you're showing something where seeing it happen real time, now that has a lot of value. But or you're walking through a presentation where somebody's highlighting what you should care about. But even but for the how-to guides and that kind of blog, I personally much prefer reading them, although I know some people love watching their videos on this kind of stuff. And again, the real pros at this is the gaming world, and kind of the what I would call a video content analysis world. Those guys are really pro at these kind of narratives of going through stuff. We're all amateurs in the computer industry compared to those guys, in the infrastructure industry. So, but I think a written, again, maybe do a conversation, record it, dump the transcript, and then just touch it up, right? I mean,
yep,
would be, I think that, because again, it's how do we get people engaged, and having GitHub is one piece, but how do people know what they ought to know what they ought to go look at in the GitHub? Well, we could write a bunch of stuff that they probably wouldn't read, or we could give them something like, hey, we actually did something, here's what it is. And if it's something straightforward, not simple but straightforward, which again, running Nginx on the DPU is, it's something somebody can comprehend, as opposed to some kind of baroque, tricky, NVMe over TCP with firewall encryption and compression and sharding, RAID sharding all at once. That has some complexity to it if you haven't been doing it for 20 years. But Nginx, people can understand, oh, I understand what that's supposed to do and why it's interesting. Cool. This is great.
Yep.
I'm glad you guys are making progress finally. This is excellent. All right.
So Paul, could I ask a question? I know that Boris was a voice that was saying there's not much to do here. Was he a little surprised at the effort to go from the simulation to the real platforms?
Yes, and I think that's his comment was, I wrote all this and it's really good to have another set of eyes on it now, finding the places that I made assumptions.
Yeah, that's excellent.
It's I think it was I'm glad there's someone finally using the code that has been written here.
And the point of my comment here is not to pick on Boris, but it's to reflect on the fact that an API, even a simulated API, is not done. We have to actually use it on the real platforms to vet it, to show that it meets the need and that it's not a busted piece of crap.
Yeah, so when we did the storage interface integration into our IPDK sub-project, there was a similar exercise done. And it took what, Dan, about 3 weeks or a month to sort all the little details out and get it up to everyone happy. And then it's been great since then. We haven't had anything since then, right, Dan? So
you mean the bring up of the back end
yeah,
going from
the storage backend where we switched the API at the beginning of this year.
yeah it's going great now. Yep.
Yeah, but it took about a month to sort out all the little details and actually adjust it when it went kind of went live, as I recall. Or
yep. Yeah, about that. Yep.
So I'm not. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great point. I mean, if we try to make so I think if the lifecycle and provisioning group, and especially when we get stuff in the lab, when we try to make them all behave the same according to the stuff the lifecycle and provisioning group is doing for the lab, we're going to hit all the same stuff again, right? All right.
I think so. I think we'll run into the same as we said at the lab, and try and run the tests against real cards. It will showcase this stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, additional ideas on what we can do with this? And the OCP thing is great. That's fantastic.
Yep. It's not that OCP is the perfect place to do this. It was just a timely.
That's correct.
Timely place to force. Well, what it did is it forced me to sit down and walk through this stuff. So myself and others, I've got a team behind me as well.
Lovely. All right. Any other comments, thoughts on this? Anything at all?
Well, yeah, I was going to suggest that there's a call to papers for Mobile World Congress. October 23rd, I think, is when it's due. Are we interested in presenting at Mobile World Congress?
Yeah, so Mobile World Congress is okay. It's
in Barcelona in February.
Okay, Barcelona in February, and I believe it's a 5-day conference, as I recall. It's a full 5-day because it's huge.
A monster of a conference, yes.
Yeah. And we know that DPUs have value at the edge. We know that DPUs have value for telco. We know that DPUs can have value for private wireless. We know that they can have value for RAN, again, RAN offload within telco, but in general for telco. So OPI ought to appeal to the people who would be considering using them. We have an OPI related demo with the Intel Ericsson project that that could be shown off there. So okay, so these are parallel tracks. So what's the structure? I've never been to Mobile World Congress. I mean, we always send people, but I've never personally been. So what's the structure of it? Is this like a 20-minute presentation, or a 40-minute, or
yeah, we submit for a breakout. It'd probably be a 40 or 50-minute presentation, a breakout session is what we'd be submitting for. My understanding is Mobile World Congress is similar to KubeCon in that it's massive and that there are tracks and different areas. I mean, it takes over the whole center. But it is. But yeah, it's a big session.
Okay.
We also have I guess myself, Vipin from AMD, and Ian from Google. We're presenting at KubeCon, and KubeCon this year asked for a sort of a telco focus for Kubernetes networking. So we're presenting on I think something that is highly applicable to Mobile World Congress, in that it's sort of like a cloud native RAN 5G use case using the Kubernetes offload that we've been talking about here in OPI.
Okay.
So I think it's definitely something that we should potentially pull into the TSC or into the API or test case group to say, hey, DPU, IPU for telco edge. What is the what are the use cases? And obviously we have the discussion with the use case with Ericsson, and it's related but not the same as using the Kubernetes primary network for RAN and 5G, but the approaches are slightly different, but in the end, the thing you put into the device is kind of the same.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a good topic to as we're looking for, hey, what are those killer apps for DPU, IPU? I do believe that this is a killer app. It goes and it solves a real problem in the telco space in terms of what we had to do. It removed some of the stand on your head things that we had to do to get telco edge to work. They get the CNFs to work in the current generation, and so it offers just a cleaner way to do cloud native outside of the cloud.
Okay. Who's the third?
So is it?
You,
Is it?
you
Is
Vipin.
it?
It's you, Vipin, and who was the third person? Then
Oh, Ian Coolidge from Google.
I won't try to spell it. All right. All right, go ahead. Comment.
I was going to suggest that if there's, it sounds like there's an ease of use story that's starting to build. So we could possibly partner on a paper. I don't know if that's the right way to go, because we want to give it the appropriate level of attention for each area of functionality. But you've got a full-on installation use case, right? And you've also got a proof of concept, and you've got this conversation about ease of use at the edge, right? The CNF story. I think it's a question of positioning OPI to say what it's trying to do. And here's what OPI is trying to do. And here are the places where we're making it easier to leverage DPUs.
Thanks for the link. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so I think we should dump something in for Mobile World Congress, and let's see what happens. Mechanically, since this is kind of through the outreach, Paul, how do you want to handle this mechanically?
At week after next.
No. So what I mean by that is, we need to create an abstract. Do we want to do that in the do you want to do the review of that in this meeting? Do we want to do the review of that in the outreach group meeting?
Oh, I think we can review it in the outreach meeting next Tuesday. And that should give it, we've got 10 days to get it submitted, 11 days. So yeah, that'll be the next outreach meeting is next week. So between now and Tuesday next week, I could really use someone to help write that abstract.
I can partner with somebody. Who was it that was just talking?
That was Dan Daly earlier.
Oh, hi, Dan Daly.
Hello.
All right,
Yeah,
Dan,
Dan's from Intel, if you couldn't tell.
yeah. Dan, you want to follow up with me offline? And I can at least help start writing it with you, and we can, because I think there's multiple stories here. So I think you and I could build out a baseline for it and put it out for review with everybody. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, we'll pull in Mike as well to hopefully tie in the Erickson work too.
Gotcha. Mike, what was your last name?
Mike Lynch.
Mike Lynch. Okay. I'll mute now.
No, sorry. That sounds okay. So that's a good idea. What else? All right. Anybody have anything else? We still need to review the alpha to beta APIs. What else do we have coming up that we should be paying attention to in the TSC? Any votes coming up that anybody going to propose a vote for making something official? Or, maybe we can, maybe next week we should review the, now that we have lab equipment on the way and that's going to get installed, we'll need people, we ought to have a sort of a final discussion on, what are we gonna do first in the lab, and what demo should we get up and running and record and that sort of thing. All right. All right. If nothing else, then I think we hit the bottom of the items we wanted to cover today. So thank you for your time. And for the abstract, once you guys get a draft of the abstract, dump it, put it in a file, send out a message on the mailing list that says, here's the abstract we're going to submit. Do a pull request and then point to the pull request. It's probably the easiest way. And or put a thing in the Google Docs and send a link to that. And so we can review it in a wider audience. I mean, I'll at least give it an editorial pass. So
Sounds good.
okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Then we're done for today. Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.